So in 1993, I was a senior manager with a company called, which is now Accenture. It used to be, at that time, it was Anderson Consulting. And when I started with them back in 1984, I was kind of a partner or bust kind of guy. I saw myself as joining this company, and that was my sole singular focus. That was the thing that I really wanted to do. So in 93, at that time I had 2 children. My son, who's sitting right there, Trevor. Trevor, raise your hand. There you go. Trevor was 8 months old, and my daughter Brianna, who is now 20. I know it's hard to believe I have a 20-year-old because I look so young. My daughter Brianna is 20. She's starting her junior year at the University of Arizona. At the time, they were 3 and 1, and my wife, who I won't tell you her age, is a wonderful, very tolerant woman. We had just moved here to Seattle, and we moved here from Chicago. And I was facing a number of very significant challenges in my life. The first challenge was my father very unexpectedly died about 4 months earlier. It was one of those deals where he was fine on Monday, got a fever on Monday night, and then by Friday afternoon he was brain dead. The second thing was I recently was transferred from Chicago up here to Seattle. Now with that transfer, while Seattle is a beautiful place, my wife didn't want to move. She wanted to stay in Chicago because she really liked it there. Also, Trevor was born 4 months prior, so we had a very active and needy 3-year-old in the house, plus a 4-month-old baby. Well, actually at that time he was 8 months. So we got transferred here to Seattle, and then 2 weeks after my transfer, I get sent down to Los Angeles. So I'm now working in Los Angeles 5 days a week, leaving on Monday morning, coming back on Friday evening. My wife is looking at me saying, "Why did we move here to Seattle if you're just going to Los Angeles every day?" It's a very good question. Now the job that I was on in Los Angeles was this absolute pressure cooker of a job. During a week, I would fly to LA in the morning, and it was very common for me to fly into LA in the morning and then fly into New York from LA during midweek, fly back to LA, and then fly back to Seattle by Friday. And it was one of those jobs where it was very commonplace to be working until 9, 10, 11 at night, and then start up at 7 and 8 again the next morning. So if you think about all those things, you think about my father dying, us moving, having a newborn and a very active 3-year-old in the house, my wife not wanting to be here and saying to me, "Why are you leaving us with all these boxes still unpacked in the house and you're going off and working in LA? We should have just done this in Chicago." And being on this pressure cooker of a job, I felt everything just starting to come down on me. It was a Thursday evening, and I was lying in my hotel room just absolutely crying from the pressure. And it was at that point that I could feel Satan right next to me, telling me to kill myself. Telling me, just do it, just end it. And me sitting there wishing, why can't I just go in the hospital and just escape everything? That was a real wake-up call. The next day, after getting no sleep at all, the next day I went into the client and called up the partners I was working for, and I said, "Can't do it anymore. I'm done." Flew back to Seattle, left everything in LA, never went back to that client again. Came home, took 3 weeks off, and just decided I needed to do something different. Because my life at that point, although I said the right things, that I said that God, my family was first, it was exactly the opposite. I treated and I walked the talk of work being first and only. And it was at that point in my life that I had to figure out what it is that I was going to do to change things. And it was at that point that I decided I need to be better controlling how I work and my spiritual and my personal life, because if I don't do it and if I don't make it the issue with me first, no one else is going to do it for me. So after telling you that nice cherry story, let me go ahead and move on. Jim, how long do I have?
34 minutes.
Till noon?
Take your time.
Okay. Okay, you guys, you don't have anything to do until noon, right? Okay, that's good. So I want to talk about this thing called work-life balance, because a lot of times you hear this term, and you can see I've got a lot of nice, cute little cartoons up here. But one of the real struggles with this thing called work-life balance is the term in and of itself implies that there's some kind of a push-pull relationship. It implies that you're having to do one at the expense of another. And it's kind of one of those things where it's like one of those little yippy dogs gnawing at your ankle. Okay? I mean, it's not gonna kill you, but it's just a real pain in the ankle. Right? It just drives you crazy, and it's something that it just always weighs on you. And I've talked to so many people, and I've done this myself, where their interpretation of work-life balance becomes, well, if I'm working 60 hours a week in my job, then what I need to do is I need to make sure that I'm cramming as much as I can in on the weekends and at nights, so that I've got this thing called work-life balance. Okay? So now what you've done is you're running at 5,000 RPMs at your job, and you say, to compensate for that, I'm going to run at 5,000 RPMs in my personal and spiritual life as well. So now you get into this mode where you're sprinting a marathon. Okay, and then you come in on Monday morning, and rather than being refreshed, and rather than feeling like you're ready to start the week again, you're exhausted. Because you're running at these constant RPMs, and you're doing it out of obligation. You're doing it out of guilt. Anybody have that situation? Okay, there's exactly 4 guys. Everyone else doesn't need to hear me speak. Only you 4 can sit up here, and everybody else can leave. Okay. So I want to talk about this thing about being busy. Because everyone will say they're busy, and I get busy as well, but there's a real danger to being busy. And the danger is how the enemy wants you to be busy. Now, if you look at all of the cults in existence, you'll see one common thread with every cult. Does anybody know what that is? Well, you're close. Cults will keep their members very, very, very busy. They will always keep them active doing something, because busyness means that they don't have time to stop and think for themselves. The adversary wants you to be so busy that you are unable to think for yourself, and you're unable to think about what is truly important. That is exactly what the adversary wants. And that's something, men, we absolutely have to protect ourselves from. So where I want to be able to focus with you is minimizing this pull between this work and life thing, and really trying to drive it to where it doesn't feel like these are competing kind of pressures that you're dealing with, but that it's this thing where you're able to manage the two together, and that you manage them more in harmony as opposed to in dissonance. But what I do want to do is I want to talk about 5 things that I think you could be doing to better drive this thing called work-life convergence, and be able to drive better the competing demands better in your life. Am I doing okay with you guys? I know I'm wandering around a little bit. Are you able to track me? Yeah? Okay. So the first thing is you absolutely have to be honest with yourself about what your priorities are, and you have to make the tough choices. Incidentally, on your tables. So in talking about priorities, it gets very easy for someone who has a good cause or something that's an important thing to come to you and say, you know what, we really need your help with doing this. And sometimes you may feel guilted into doing it. And it's like, I know it's a really good cause. I know it's something that I should be doing. There are a lot of really, really good causes. There's a lot of really good things that you could be doing. But unless you decide what your priorities are and the things that you're going to focus on, you'll burn yourself out doing all these other priorities and doing these other things.